Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered why some things you say or hear stick in your brain more than others? And sometimes why certain words pop out and others get stuck? And why does this happen more with sounds than with pictures? That is exactly what a team of researchers wanted to figure out. They noticed that when people are asked to name things, especially when they're shown a lot of similar things over and over, they get slower. The slowing down is called semantic interference. But here is the really interesting part. This interference is much bigger when people are naming sounds compared to when they're naming pictures. Think about it like this. If you are shown pictures of dogs, cats, and birds, and then asked to name them, and then you are shown more pictures of dogs, cats, and birds, the second time around, it is a bit slower than if you were shown a dog, a car, and a chair. But with sounds like hearing a bark, a meow, or a chirp, and then hearing more barks, meows, and chirps. The slowing down is way more dramatic. Why is that? That is the big puzzle this study dives into. The researchers had a few ideas. One idea was that maybe it is because sounds and pictures are processed differently, especially in the early stages, before we even pick the word we want to say. Another thought was that perhaps it has to do with how long the sound or picture stays on the screen overlapping with our brain trying to get ready to speak. Or maybe it is a difference in the input itself. One is sound, the other is sight, and they even considered if the way we speak, or the output, has something to do with it. So they set up 4 experiments to test these ideas. In experiment 1, they basically repeated an earlier study. They showed people pictures and played sounds, and people had to name them. The big change here was that they made the sounds and pictures show up for a much shorter time. They did this to see if that overlap between hearing the sound and getting ready to speak was the real reason for the big slowdown. If it was, then shortening the sound presentation should make the interference less different between sounds and pictures. But what they found was surprising. Even with the shorter presentation time, the same big difference in interference between sounds and pictures was still there. This means that simply overlapping the sound processing with the speaking preparation wasn't the whole story. This experiment confirmed that the problem isn't just about the sound playing for too long while you are already trying to say the word. The difference is there even when the stimuli are presented very briefly. This is a key finding because it points to something happening earlier in the process, before the output, before you even start preparing to speak. Next, they wanted to know if it is the difference between hearing and seeing that matters. In experiment 2, they changed things up. Instead of pictures and sounds, they used written words and spoken words in German. People had to translate these words into English. They did this with both written and spoken words to compare auditory versus visual input. Again, they found semantic interference, meaning naming was slower for related words. But here is the twist. The interference was about the same for spoken words and written words. This suggested that the difference between hearing and seeing input wasn't the main reason for the big difference they saw with sounds and pictures. This result was pretty important because it told them that it is not just about whether you hear something or see something in general. The specific way sounds and pictures are processed must be more important. They decided to do a bit more digging into the input modality. In experiment 3, they went back to using pictures and sounds, like in experiment 1, but this time participants had to name them in their second language, English. And guess what? They found the same big difference in interference between sounds and pictures again. Just like in experiment 1, this experiment is crucial because it shows that even when people are responding in a different language, the effect of sound versus picture still holds. It strengthens the idea that the problem doesn't lie in the output being spoken or in a different language, but rather in how the initial stimulus, the sound or the picture, is processed. Finally, they looked at the output, the response itself. In experiment 1, people spoke their answers. In experiment 4, they had people type their answers. The big question here was, does the fact that we have to produce a sound with our voice cause this difference? If so, then changing the response to typing, which doesn't involve vocal cords, should make the difference disappear. But again, the results were consistent with previous experiments. They found the same larger interference for sounds compared to pictures, even when people were typing their answers. This experiment tells us that the problem isn't with the act of speaking itself. It is not the preparation of vocal movements or the self-monitoring that happens when you speak. The interference is happening earlier before that stage. So, what is the big takeaway from all these experiments? The researchers have ruled out several possibilities. It is not just about the overlap in time between processing the stimulus and preparing to speak. It is not just about the difference between seeing and hearing in general. And it is not specifically about the act of speaking the word. The strongest evidence points to something happening very early on in the initial perceptual and semantic processing of the stimulus. The theory that best fits the data is that sounds, unlike pictures, are processed in a more spread out or diffuse way initially. When you see a picture of a dog, all the visual information comes in at once, and your brain quickly activates the concept of dog. But with a sound, like a bark, it unfolds over time. At first, you might just know it is an animal sound, but it takes a bit longer to pinpoint it as a dog's bark and connect it specifically to a dog. This less precise initial activation for sounds might carry over to how words are selected, creating more competition and thus leading to that larger interference effect. This is super important for anyone studying how we produce language. It means we can't just look at the moment someone says a word. We need to pay close attention to those very first steps, how our brain makes sense of sounds and images, before we even start to form a word. These aren't just simple lead-in processes, as they've sometimes been called. They actually have a big impact on the whole process. Now, a little note on how science works. These researchers were very open about their work. They shared all their data and analysis scripts. This is fantastic because it allows other scientists to check their work, build on it, and really trust the findings. It's a sign of a healthy and transparent scientific process. So, what does this mean for you and me? It tells us that our brains are incredibly complex. The way we understand and produce language is influenced by very subtle differences in how we perceive the world. The next time you hear a sound and then say its name, or see a picture and name it, remember all the sophisticated processing that is happening behind the scenes, and how those initial moments of perception can shape your entire interaction with language. It is a reminder that even the simplest seeming tasks involve a whole lot of amazing brain power. What do you think about these findings? Does it make sense to you that sounds might be processed differently than pictures? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this dive into the science of language. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more fascinating research, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the human mind. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.